This is an ABC podcast.
You're listening to The Country Hour on ABC Radio South Australia and Broken Hill.
Good afternoon, I'm Nikolai Bailhartz with you for the next few days while Cassie has a bit of a break. Now, speaking of breaks, plenty to talk about today, including that age-old question of when do you sow your crops? Do you wait for a break in the weather? Do you just go for it? Well, that question's now being asked in a high-tech way, an online poll that's been put together by one farmer. So we'll find out what he learned, particularly when it comes to that idea of dry sowing and whether farmers are as concerned about that as they used to be. Also on the program today you'll see a lot more avocados on the shelf soon. Growing regions, including the Riverland, are expecting to double how many avos are grown. We'll find out why. To start today, though, Citrus SA says it's still unclear whether growers have secured enough seasonal workers to get all their fruit picked during the state's peak harvest time. It comes after Primary Industry Minister David Basham confirmed in a statement that there hasn't been enough industry take-up of the Pacific Island Seasonal Worker Scheme to justify the last 2 scheduled flights. That means 4 of the 6 scheduled flights under the scheme have been confirmed to arrive in South Australia, bringing in more than 900 seasonal workers. Deputy Chair of Citrus SA, Anthony Fullwood, says the high cost of recruiting seasonal workers under the program is one factor that's holding growers back from recruiting more workers under the scheme.
Look, I think a lot of growers, smaller growers that use contractors or have picking gangs organised, I know the message has been going out for quite a while now to growers to make sure they've got enough pickers and to check with their contractors. Obviously, the growers believe they have enough people. Whether that will be the case come the peak of the season will be another story.
Now, with recruiting less workers from the Pacific Islands than the potential was, what does that mean?
Look, I think obviously, the people sort of organising those and, the people looking for that sort of had the opportunity to bring islanders in have sort of believe they have their numbers correct. Whether that's right, I'm not sure. Obviously, the cost is probably one of those prohibitions that people sort of scared some people away, and that's probably why Citrus SA has sort of continually been calling for a Pacific Islander bubble so that maybe that quarantine cost isn't as bad.
Coming into peak season, are you worried that some crops potentially might not be picked?
Look, from a personal point of view, I believe I'm sort of in the position to get everything off. Maybe some people, most people believe they're probably in that right position, depending on the crop, I suppose. And if there's a high crop, then that might sort of cause issues. The weather might, if that delays picking for a day or two or more, that might hold people back.
That is Citrus SA Deputy Chair Anthony Fullwood speaking there with Jessica Schremer. And he was speaking there about the weather. As I mentioned earlier, dry conditions rolling on for many grain growers. So does that age-old question of whether to keep sowing flat out, slow down, or stop entirely and wait for rain to come into play at the moment? Well, it's a question that Kaniva farmer Jonathan Dyer posted on Twitter this week and got plenty of lively discussion in response. A rural reporter Angus Verley spoke with him about what prompted the question.
Yeah, flat out seeding ourselves at the moment. Yeah, but it's very, very dry and dusty here. We've had less than 50 millimetres of rain for the year so far, and we're under 10 mils for the growing season so far. So dry and dusty, but still lots of tractors in the area going, dust flying. So just wondering what different people's attitudes are, because some farmers like to have a weed kill before they get their crop in, or to be certain that seed's going to grow as soon as they plant it, and others have a totally different attitude and say, well, we've got to sow by the calendar and we've just got to get it done. So it's just, seeing what the spread was of opinions out there.
Okay, so you gave people 4 options, and I'll just run through them and the rough results. So full noise, well, going flat out, around 40% of people said that's what they were doing. Gentleman's hours, so going but not flat out, 44%. started sowing but have now stopped sowing 7%, and those still holding out for a break was 9%. What did you make of those answers?
Yeah, really interesting. I was probably surprised that the majority of farmers sort of seem to be going for it. And even if they're not going perhaps quite flat out, they're still getting something in the ground and getting something done. There was only those bottom two options, was it? Less than 20% of them combined and not doing much at all and holding out. So, yeah, we live by faith, don't we?
And what's the rationale, Jonathan? Do you think people have seen in the past that those dry sown crops that have got away earlier have been the best performing crops?
Yeah, I'm sure it's like everything in farming, I'm sure it's a bit location specific. I sort of know for us or for the Wimmera, our rainfall patterns are winter dominated. So June, July and August are our wettest months. So, we just, a bit different to our friends in New South Wales who perhaps if they haven't got a bit of a profile of moisture, they won't plant. We sort of, the majority of our rain usually comes after we've planted our crops. So I guess we just go ahead and hope that, that it will happen.
And for you, are you attracted to the simpler process of dry sowing? Maybe you're not worried about blockages or getting bogged or being limited by what sorts of hours you can sow?
Yeah, that's one thing I've certainly noticed this year compared to last year when we had the Anzac Day or near enough break. We had the sprayers flying and the seeder going. It's definitely been, in some ways, as you say, it's easier. You can start early in the morning. You don't have to wait for the fog or the dew to dry out before you can get the sprayer going and then get the seeder going, because in many cases we're not even spraying at all, so we can just kind of just hop into it. And because there's one less person in a tractor, we've been able to, split shifts on the seeder a bit more and keep pushing that. So in some ways, as you say, it makes life a lot easier.
You mentioned summer rains earlier and whether you've had summer rains to germinate weeds. Have you had those summer rains? And if you haven't, are you worried about what weeds will come when we do get a proper break?
That's the challenge. No, we haven't had any significant summer rainfall at all, really, since the end of harvest. Not sure off the top of my head, but I think our largest rain event since the end of December would be 10 mils or less. So, nothing much has germinated here. Yeah, that's the risk, I guess, with dry sowing is that you don't get that early, easier hit on the weeds before you plant your crop. You've got to rely on your more expensive pre-emergent chemicals and your other, I guess, cultural control things you might be doing on your farm to try and control them.
Now, Jonathan, you said you fit into that full noise category. There's not really any substantial rain on the horizon at this point. Will you be comfortable to keep going full noise, even if it does mean the whole crop is in before we do get a break?
I'm not sure, to be honest. We've never gotten to that point sort of in my time on the farm so far. I had a bit of a chat amongst the family members this morning and agreed that, well, for the next 2 weeks we'll keep pressing on and see how we go. As I said, I've never got to the end of sowing before without us getting something to get something growing somewhere. So hopefully that will happen.
And just going back to those results, do you think, I suppose if we look at those top two, people going full noise or gentleman's hours accounting for 84% of respondents, maybe talking to some people of other generations, what results do you think we may have expected even only a generation ago?
Yeah, I'm sure that has changed, that we're more confident with our dry sowing now. And I guess there's probably a bunch of reasons to do that. Probably our inter-row sowing and our ability to get modern seeders and ability to get into dry, hard grounds probably better than it was, as well as we've got, as I mentioned earlier, more options with our weed control. So probably a few things going on there. But I guess the thing with us is summer it doesn't feel like it with the weather at the moment, Angus, but summer is coming. And our challenge in the Wimmera, at least, is always, getting those crops to fill as we come into the warmer, drier time at the end of the year. And that's probably what's on everyone's minds, I think.
Yeah, it's Canova farmer Jonathan Dyer speaking there with Angus Verlin. It'd be keen to hear from you this lunchtime what stage you're at, whether you're at that full noise as it was described or gentleman's hours, or maybe you are holding off. You can send us a text. 0467 922 891 is the text number. 0467 922 891. And we have had a text already saying for Central Western New South Wales, 75% done. And that is on a full seeding program. If you'd like to send us a text, 0467 922 891. It's just coming up to 12:15 here on the Country Hour. My name's Nikolai Balehartz. Well, the Riverland and nearby Sunraysia region are preparing for a bumper avocado harvest, which will start in July. The region is expected to produce double the amount of fruit that it did last season. Avocado Australia's Tri-State Director Kim Teal told Kelly Hollingworth it's possible that 1 million trays could be packed.
The big increase is a combination of, yes, some trees, younger plantings coming into production, but most of it is driven by just the exceptional conditions we had. So it goes back to last year when we had the light crop. The trees were all ready to produce, flowered very heavily. We then obviously had some very good setting conditions. So the fruit was on the tree. But the single biggest thing is probably the combination of the mild summer, where we had no real extreme heat throughout that December, January, February into March period, where traditionally we will get excessive fruit drops even if we do set large crops. So this year being so mild over summer is probably the single biggest contributor to our large crop.
What is the quality of the fruit going to be like?
We should have everything to meet every consumer demand. So on the tree at the moment, we have some very big, once again, because of that mild summer, we have some very good size fruit, so there will be good size fruit. Blemish levels are down, especially on what we had 2 years ago. So 2 years ago we had a relatively heavy crop in the district, but we had some very bad wind blemished fruit, but we don't have that this year. Yes, there'll be a certain amount of class 1 as opposed to premium fruit, but at the moment we have all sizes. Being such a heavy crop, we'll have all sizes and all grades to meet all consumer demands.
With the increase in fruit, are you confident that growers are going to be able to get the prices that they're expecting?
It'll be interesting. It'll be the first year I think the market's really been challenged, and therefore there's no doubt that prices will come back from the Hallison days that industry's been used to over the last few years, and the returns, it won't be there per tray, but they'll come back to a level where hopefully with the volume of fruit we have to move it through the marketplace. So we don't want fruit sitting around in the market, so we don't want fruit getting old. If we can maintain a good flow of fruit through the market at a good, consistent average price, I'm sure growers will still, with the amount of crop they'll have, will still have a very profitable season. And everyone, the consumer should have a win, and the industry should have a win.
Sunraysia and the Riverland aren't the only places where there'll be lots of avocados to pick. Nationally, it's forecast that production could reach 23.5 million trays between April 2021 and March next year. Trentham Cliffs avocado grower and packer Ryan Marr says while this will have its challenges, it's also an exciting time to be in the industry.
Australia has never really been able to grow the crop to supply the full season before, so this year's looking like all Australian growers will be able to supply the demand rather than having to rely on imports from New Zealand.
When you go to the supermarket to get your avocados, there's nothing more frustrating than cutting it open at home and it being bruised or having some other defect to it. There seems to be a big focus on trying to reduce or remove that issue. How important is it for you as a grower that the best quality fruits out there?
Bruised and damaged fruit reduces demand, so that's obviously at the top of the list of importance for growers to make sure that the fruit is well treated from the tree to the retailer. Australian fruit tends to be the most reliable in terms of internal quality. It pretty much comes down to how old the fruit is and what temperatures it's been subjected to through the supply chain. So Australian fruit will be the youngest fruit, I guess you could say, on the shelf, so you're more likely to get a higher quality piece of fruit if it's not as old, basically what it comes down to.
That's Trentham Cliffs avocado grower Ryan Marr speaking there with Kelly Hollingworth.
You're listening to Nikolai Balehartz on ABC Radio South Australia and Broken Hill.
It is 12:19. Australian researchers have discovered the cause of faba bean gall disease, which devastates crops in Ethiopia. Researchers from the University of Western Australia have worked with the Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research and a number of other groups on this study. The university's Professor Martin Babetti says the discovery follows 110 years of thought that a different type of pathogen called an opidium was causing the disease.
That's why we were really interested in it. We never believed that it was the original pathogen that had been named, which is an Opidium. We'd always thought it was a different pathogen. It had different field symptoms to Opidiums. It had different biology to Opidium, and we're able to show that, in fact, it wasn't an Opidium at all type of pathogen. It was a pathogen known as Physoderma. And Physodermas are really important pathogens when you've got a lot of water. And a lot of water is what you've got in the highlands of Ethiopia where they grow faba beans.
What impact does the gall disease have on faba bean crops and the farmers in Ethiopia?
On the crops, if the disease is severe, you can get up to 100% losses. So the plants are all stunted, they don't grow properly, they don't produce worst affected crops, no beans at all. The effect on the farmers is absolutely devastating. So they lose their crop, which is a really important food source for them. They've got about 500,000 hectares of faba bean in Ethiopia. Any extra faba beans that they've got, they sell those. The small amount of money that they used to get from faba bean crops was then used to buy the fertiliser so they could then grow their main cereal crops. And they're not able then to pay for their children to be able to go to school. And now they had almost no residues even for the animal feed. So it's devastating on their whole farming systems.
Now that you've found the correct pathogen, what's next?
And now we know exactly when to put on chemical sprays. We know where the weaknesses are in the pathogen's life cycle, where we can attack it by cultural means, by rotating crops, by ploughing land in a way to get better drainage of the soil so you get less disease. And of course the main area of control in the end that we hope for is to have resistant varieties. And so there's a lot of work going on in Ethiopia in all those different possible control and management aspects, but in particular for looking for host resistance to the pathogen. Because the problem with chemicals is, yes, they can work, but they are very expensive. So they don't want to be being forced to be able, or forced to using chemicals in order to be able to grow the crop. And chemicals are also far too variable. So in the end, for faba beans to come back to being a viable crop in Ethiopia, they need host resistance in the long-term sense. It's really the only true cost-effective way for managing this disease in Ethiopia, and really in the same way for some diseases in Australia, it's the same. We rely very heavily upon host resistance.
Australians do farm faba beans. Is this disease something that farmers here need to be concerned about?
At this stage, no, because we don't have this pathogen in Australia. We are, of course, concerned that if it should ever come into Australia, because we have about 500,000 hectares of faba beans grown in Australia, and it's an important export market for us in Australia. So currently we don't have this particular Physoderma in Australia, and we're very keen to make sure that it never comes into Australia. What concerns us is that in Ethiopia, this particular pathogen is not just on faba beans, but it's also on field pea, and it's also on clovers. The potential for spread into other countries is actually greater because it has these multiple hosts. So currently in Australia, we don't have this particular Physoderma pathogen, but we have related Physoderma pathogens in the past on our clovers, but they were really only in where we had very wet areas.
You mentioned earlier about looking for some host resistance as a way to stop the spread of this disease in the future. Is it likely that any plants here in Australia would have some resistance, even to those related varieties which you've just mentioned?
We're sending Australian germplasm to Ethiopia to be screened for resistance, so both breeding lines and varieties, to see if any of the faba beans which we grow in Australia or are in breeding programs in Australia have resistance to this particular pathogen. Ideally, we would want to have good resistance to this pathogen inbuilt, if you like, into Australian varieties, so that if for some reason or other this problem ever came to Australia, we'd already have the resistance built into our varieties to protect our current industry.
That is Professor Martin Babetti speaking there with our reporter Bridget Herman. Another text through on just how you're progressing with sowing this season's crop so far. We were talking earlier about a poll as to whether people are going full on or whether they're, as the poll called it, keeping gentleman's hours. Well, Steve in the mid-north says he is indeed keeping gentleman's hours at the moment, also making the point that in 2005 the season's opening rain was on the 12th of June. So Steve says, don't panic yet. If you would like to send us a text, 0467 922 891 is the text number. It's just coming up to 25 past 12 on the Country Hour, and that does mean it's time to find out what is happening weather-wise. Let's head off to the Bureau of Meteorology. Bonnie Hazelgrove is on duty. Afternoon, Bonnie.
Good afternoon, Nikolai.
We will talk rain because there is a little bit on the way, but before we get to that, how are things looking today?
Well, we're seeing some middle-level cloud across most of southern and western South Australia. That is seeing some patchy middle-level showers falling out in the far west. We're expecting that to consolidate into a rain band later today, mostly confined to the far northwest of the state, but we will see some showers also developing about southern parts of the state late today, and they'll spread across the rest of the agricultural area tomorrow. So by the time we get to tomorrow, we've got that rain band in the north and showers in the south, and possible precipitation pretty much across the whole of South Australia, apart from perhaps the far northeast, not looking as likely to see much tomorrow. We're also seeing a few thunderstorms around in the far west at the moment. They're likely to continue out in the west today, and then mainly about the northwest pastoral district tomorrow. Once that system tomorrow has moved through, looking like those showers will be confined mainly to southern coasts on Sunday, perhaps a few lingering showers in the morning about the Flinders Ranges. But then on Monday, we see another system move through, which will bring showers right across the agricultural area and into the south of the pastoral districts. And then back to a dry day on Tuesday before we see another system move through on Thursday. So a series of fronts and troughs moving through over the next 7 days, likely to bring us some reasonable rainfall, we hope. Rainfall totals for the next 4 days, so through to midnight Tuesday. Well, most of that is going to fall tomorrow and on Monday. Looking at 1 to 5 millimetres over the northern agricultural area and pastoral districts. That's increasing to 5 to 15 millimetres over the southern agricultural area, and with that rain and thunderstorms in the north of the state today and tomorrow. In the far northeast, though, with not much rainfall reaching that area, rainfall totals likely to be less than a millimetre over the next 4 days. Could also see some isolated rainfall of 15 to 25 millimetres over the Mount Lofty Ranges, south of Mount Nuriupta, and over the lower southeast district as well over the next 4 days, particularly with that front coming through on Monday. If we look at some temperatures around the state today, we've got Nuriupta reaching a mostly sunny top of 23 degrees, Maitland mostly sunny as well and 22 degrees, Kingscote partly cloudy, plenty of middle-level cloud around there and top of 21 degrees, Mount Gambier also partly cloudy and 21, Keith mostly sunny 24, Murray Bridge mostly sunny and 25. In the Riverland, Renmark's looking at a mostly sunny top of 26 degrees today, Port Pirie partly cloudy and 26 degrees also, Port Augusta also 26 degrees there. On Eyre Peninsula, we've got Whyalla reaching 26 degrees, Port Lincoln a mostly sunny top of 21 degrees. Ceduna could see a few showers developing later, top of 26 degrees though before those showers move in. And Coober Pedy, we've got that possible rain band developing, still reaching a top of 28 degrees though. And Woomera, a possible late shower in 26. Puketja Ernabella, that most likely to see rainfall, up to 25 degrees there today. And in the northeast, remaining dry, but still got some warm temperatures there. So Lee Creek up to 25 degrees, Moomba a sunny day and 25 degrees also.
And just before we let you go, Bonnie, for that rain on Monday, is that when most people should be keeping an eye out? How certain is it looking?
It's looking reasonable certain, although most of it will probably be just with an intense band with the front as that moves through. At this stage, the timing of that looks like it will be in the morning. But yeah, I could see some drying conditions through the afternoon on Monday. So most of the focus will be with the single band with the front, but possibly a few follow-up showers in the southwesterly following the front.
Okay, thanks so much, Bonnie.
Thanks, Nikolai.
Morning, Hazelgrove from the Bureau of Meteorology. For the Western Inland, for Upper Western, it will be partly cloudy. A medium chance of showers in the far west and near zero chance elsewhere. Overnight temperatures falling to between 9 and 15. Daytime temperatures reaching 20 to 26. For Lower Western, partly cloudy. The slight chance of a shower most likely in the afternoon and evening. Overnight temperatures will fall to between 9 and 14. Daytime temperatures reaching the low 20s. It's coming up to 12:30.
You're listening to The Country Hour. For more stories from across the country, go to abc.net.au/rural. On ABC Radio Adelaide, South Australia and Broken Hill, this is Nikolai Balehartz.
Hello there, and thank you for joining us. Plenty to talk about this Friday afternoon, heading into the weekend. I wonder if this weekend you're going to spend a little bit of time cooking up a seafood feast. Well, fishermen in South Australia say that they're a bit disappointed they're not allowed to catch more fish after being invited to apply for a higher catch quota. So we'll be talking about that, but I'd be keen to hear from you this lunchtime. Do you particularly look out for South Australian caught fish when you're at the shops? Would you like to see more if it can be fished sustainably? You can send us a text. 0467 922 891 is the text number. 0467 922 891, or you can give us a call as well on 1300 222 891. Also on the program this afternoon, one of the institutions of the Outback, the Country Women's Association, says that at a federal level, it's in a bit of financial trouble. We'll find out why. First, though, let's get the latest news headlines with Wendy Glamachek. Afternoon, Wendy.
Good afternoon, Nikolai. In the news this hour, SA Health says a computer glitch that sometimes caused some hospital medications to be prescribed at higher doses than required by patients has now been fixed. The glitch meant electronic patient management system Sunrise was wrongly adding an extra digit to dosages at public hospitals, including the Royal Adelaide Hospital. A full investigation is underway, but SA Health doesn't believe that any patients were adversely affected. An Adelaide woman who swore allegiance to terrorist group Islamic State has been released from prison. 26-year-old Zainab Abdirahman Khalif was convicted of being an Islamic State member. Her conviction was overturned in October of 2019, but her acquittal was then overturned by the High Court and she had to serve out her sentence. And the Federal Agriculture Minister says Australia will not compromise on its values or principles in order to improve relations with China. The comments on Sky News come after China suspended all activities under an economic agreement between the two nations. The China-Australia Strategic Economic Dialogue had not met since 2017 amid the deteriorating relationship between the countries. We'll bring you more ABC News at 1 o'clock.
Thanks very much, Wendy. Indeed, yes, more challenging developments for that important trade relationship. We will continue to talk about that here as well. But as I mentioned, there's a bit of tension at the moment between commercial fishermen and government. The Marine Scale Fisheries Association has met with the state government to talk about how to help fishers who've been assigned too little fishing quota to be financially viable under a new system. Now, out of 90 South Australian fishers who expressed interest in receiving more catch quota, only 23 received any. Now, some fishers say they're now facing an uncertain future due to a lack of quota or how much they're allowed to catch, as Lucas Forbes reports.
Yeah, it's not fishing weather for the next couple of days, so the place is going to get a makeover. So it's unfortunately you go from one job to the next job to the next job and nothing gets tidied up.
John Pasculi is showing me around what he calls his man cave. Along it you'll find many of the familiar trappings of a man cave, including a beer bottle collection, family pictures and a footy Guernsey.
So a Port Adelaide fan, I can...
No, they want that Guernsey, but they're not getting it. That's Collingwood.
Because of all the prison bar stuff, I guess I must have thought about that.
Well, yeah, they're silly buggers there. It's actually the wharf pylons.
However, unlike other man caves, Mr. Pasculi also keeps artefacts from the history of fishing in South Australia.
This bamboo tuna pole would have to be one of my favourites. That belonged to Benny Sims. He was a fisherman down Moontaway, and he was instrumental in fishing a lot of different ways back probably 50 years ago.
Mr. Pasculi is a third-generation fisher, and despite his love of fishing, he's worried how his business will turn a profit with his current fishing quota.
I caught just short of 7,000 kilos of squid last year, and the fisheries have deemed that they think it's right that I get 1,000 kilos for my quota ongoing. So I think the last five years I would have averaged, the averages would have worked out to be probably about 3.5 tonne or 3,500 kilos, and because they've taken it from a specific date, that was only the 1 year that the squid actually came in thick. So I was probably lucky to get that 1,000 kilo. But if they had have gone different years after that, my quota would be substantially better off, and then I wouldn't be concerned.
Well, did you try explaining that to the appeals process and to PIRSA?
No, not PIRSA myself. They had Dr. Cannon. He was a retired judge, and we sat in Kadina Courthouse or Town Hall, and we just stated our case. Then he was to deem if it was relevant, and then he'd take it to the minister, and they'd discuss which way they'd go with that.
What came of that?
Basically, I think I probably would have got about 11%, which is, I think it was about 110 or 109 kilo extra.
The state government's commercial fishing reforms, including assigning fishers individual quotas based on their catch history, and included buyouts for fishers who wanted to sell their licences back to the government and get out of the game. However, Mr Pascouli says if he was going to leave the fishery, he wants to do it on his own terms.
The buyout is $180,000. Now, I don't seem to be, I don't want to be rude and dismiss that as nothing, but there is a thing that some things cannot be bought. Some things aren't for sale. And heritage is something that I'm a third generation fisherman, and heritage is in my blood. And really there is no monetary figure. I just choose to want to get out of the game on my own terms, which is just terms, not be forced out. Now, this is what the government are doing. With a current licence fee of $10,000 a year, quota that I've been given will probably amount to about $45,000. Now, with that, there's freight, there's wages, and then there's commission where you send it. They charge 10%. So clearly, the monetary side of it's going to be very poor and unviable for me at this stage.
The Marine Scale Fisheries Association's Dr. Gary Morgan met with Primary Industries Minister David Basham this week to discuss how those fishers who feel they've missed out can adapt.
Yeah, well, the government's put the ball back in the industry's court and said, and the minister said, I'm happy to consider proposals that you might put forward, to help these people have a transition their businesses. So we at the moment are currently working on options that we can give the minister. And those sort of options, might include rural development grants. It may include some federal funding through the Fisheries Research and Development Corporation. But the aim is to help the fishermen transition their business to something that can be viable.
Port Pirie fisher John Pascouli says despite his concerns about his allocation, he plans to fight to stay on the water.
It's my hand is getting forced. I did talk it over with my wife, and she said, "No, you're not getting out. You love it. It's in you." But then it comes to what's financially viable, and all fishermen are passionate about their industry. We were all for reform. We thought it could be a great thing. Just depends on what formulas they're using to do it.
That's Port Pirie fisher John Pascouli ending that report from Lucas Forbes and Bridget Herman. If you'd like to read more about that story, there is more detail up online too at abc.net.au/rural. But as part of that, we've been talking about this idea of whether you look out for South Australian caught fish, local fish, when you're at the shops. Would you like to see more if it can be done sustainably? We've had a few texts through on that one. One person says, on locally caught fish, yes, I'd love to have these highlighted, as Australia has much higher environmental standards and better fishing practices than many of the cheaper imported produce. And another person says, of course, everyone prefers fresh local fish. Who'd want farmed fish that get fed on who knows what? If you'd like to send us a text, 0467 922 891 is the text number, or you can give us a call on 1300 222 891. It is 22-1. My name's Nikolai Balehartz. Now, if we move to a real Australian institution now, the national arm of the Country Women's Association is in financial trouble. Its future has been debated at the New South Wales Country Women's Association's conference, along with motions on climate, solar energy and mining exploration as well. Our reporter Kira Proust attended the three-day event.
One of the biggest things to come out of the conference was the national body's uncertain future, with New South Wales delegates voting in favour of taking a leadership role in an attempt to ensure the CWA of Australia is a viable entity. Members of the national body used the conference as a chance to express it may have to cease operations due to financial pressures, but state delegates rallied behind them, showing their support in the way they know best through a motion. The conference heard that the national CWA's future will be decided at a meeting in mid-May. Alongside the heated debates about the CWA of Australia's future were a number of important motions put forward to determine what the State Association will lobby government at all levels for in the coming year. One of those was to push for prescribed cannabis medicine to be put on the federal government's pharmaceutical benefits scheme to help subsidise costs. I spoke with CWA Cobargo's Mary Williams, who put the motion forward, about what it will mean for the CWA moving forward.
Well, what it means is that they will be lobbying the government to say, this is inequitable and it should be, if it's a legal drug, which it is, why is it being excluded from the pharmaceutical benefit scheme? If there need to be more testing and so forth, then why aren't we going ahead and doing it? Okay? And they will push it. And, when you think about it, from Cobargo, how powerful that effect is, that you can say, hey, this isn't fair, I'd like it changed. And you go to CWA, get it through CWA, and they will then take it right to government.
Another huge issue discussed was the placement of large solar plants on agricultural land, with Jundera putting forward a motion to oppose solar plants on prime agricultural land to protect food and fibre productivity. The motion passed through, but we heard rigorous debate for and against the motion, as State President Stephanie Stanhope explains.
It was great just to hear the opinions on the solar farms on prime agricultural land. Some with the farmer has a right to do what he likes with his land, and then others who feel that we need to protect prime agricultural land for the food supply for Australians. So everyone is entitled to their opinion.
And another big one, sticking with agricultural land, a motion that passed through with a hoped benefit for farmers was Whitecliffe's motion to lobby the government to cease assessing $2 companies who are looking to undertake mineral exploration. I spoke with branch delegate Penny Clark, who put the motion forward, about her experiences in rural areas against these mining companies and why she felt so passionately about the issue.
It's because I've personally experienced, and also people in my district, most of my neighbours have also come across it. Mineral exploration happens as a matter of course, and we're not against that. We want to make that really clear. We're not against mineral exploration. We don't like poorly regulated mineral exploration. And what happens is there's a lot of $2 companies and individuals, under-resourced companies, junior companies that are licensed to go and explore on farmland. But we've also noticed an increasing number of companies that are using really complex company structures, putting a $2 company in that owns the licence, that gets the licence, in order to protect the assets and resources of a larger company from any compensation due to the landholder. And obviously this puts the landholder at disadvantage.
That's New South Wales CWA Delegate Penny Clark ending that report by Kira Proust. The future of the national CWA will be decided at a meeting on the 18th of May.
This is ABC Radio Adelaide, South Australia and Broken Hill.
And my name's Nikolai Balehartz. It is 17-1. Let's talk about an interesting development when it comes to dates now. The Islamic holy month of Ramadan is on at the moment. It ends next week on May the 12th, and in a roundabout way, it's led to a boom in demand for one agricultural crop. Traditionally, the Ramadan daily fast is broken by eating dates. One of Australia's largest date farms is about 60 kilometres from Alice Springs. Hugo Ricard-Bell spoke with one of the farm's directors, Sean O'Connor, about just how important Ramadan is for the business.
It's particularly important in that clearly that's a major segment or demographic that appreciates dates, much like ourselves. But Ramadan being on a lunar calendar, it moves throughout the year. So there's times when Ramadan won't line up with our harvest and times that it will. And, with Ramadan there's the breaking of the fast of an evening. But our dates get distributed all over Australia. And we in fact have a couple of wholesalers who did send some of our crunchy bahi, the bahi kalas, over to, I believe, United Arab Emirates. That was because we fortunately lined up very well with Ramadan, and our fruit is some of the first available fresh in the season.
What sort of demand increase do you see when it does line up with your harvest, do you know?
A lot. The beautiful thing about our situation is we do this as a love. We love to share our dates, share our produce, locally grown produce, and we get a lot of love back, and we get a lot of people that just come out of the woodwork, for want of a better phrase. So we have a lot of new customers this year in particular, like I said, because Ramadan is lining up. We've had people actually fly and visit the farm and look to organise dates for their needs, and so it's been really incredible.
What sort of extra preparation has to go into your harvest to prepare for Ramadan?
Yeah, that's a good question, Hugo. I'm relatively new to the cooperative, about 3 years, and the farming operations side very recently. And what we are seeing more as an opportunity is that we could bring our customers and potential customers along on our journey and keep them better informed as to when dates are ready and at what stages they're at, just so we can interface with their needs more effectively. We did have quite a few customers who heard about us through word of mouth and inquired, and unfortunately the particular date they were after, which has a limited season, the Bahi Khalas, the season had finished for them. So that was really sad. But we've taken their details, let them know that we'll let them know next year. So what it'll be is really looking to coordinate the needs of our customers with the harvest, and really just getting as much of the harvest out there at the right time to the right people, just so that they've got what they would like, particularly for Ramadan, which is fresh dates to break the fast with.
That was something that a dietitian, Lena Barek, mentioned, that when they break their Ramadan, one of the first things they eat is a rush of sugar from the dates.
Yes, that's right. That's what I've heard as well. And I understand even in the Quran it mentions how many dates you can have per day, which I understand, and I could well be wrong, I'm not well informed, but is 6 dates maximum a day. So if you're a date lover, of course, you'd be choosing the big medules over the smaller bahi.
And that does add up, doesn't it? That's Desert Fruit Company's Sean O'Connor speaking there with Hugo Ricard-Bell. 13-1, my name's Nikolai Balehartz. Now, you occasionally hear about long bike rides for charity, and this is a big one. A group of 3 cyclists are riding from Canberra to Perth to try and raise funds for the Australian Rural Leadership Foundation. Graham Smith, who's leading the group, used to work for the foundation and wants to raise $40,000 for a scholarship for one participant to take part. The foundation is a not-for-profit organisation which was established in the early 90s with the aim of developing leaders in rural and regional and remote Australia. Brooke Neindorf spoke with him in Alliston this week to find out why he wanted to pull on the lycra.
Firstly, I wanted to see if I could ride to Perth, see if I could actually make it. But the main reason is that for the last 7 years I've worked for an organisation called the Australian Rural Leadership Foundation, and I've been really impressed at the positive impact that the programs that the foundation runs has on rural, regional, remote people. And having worked with it, and when I retired, which was just a few weeks ago, I wanted to help raise a scholarship, because I think the effect is just such a great thing, and I want to be still involved, even though I'm not working for it. So it was a way of satisfying my own goal of writing to Perth, but also being involved with the foundation post-work.
Tell us about the foundation and how it's helped people over the years.
The foundation's been running for almost 30 years, and it was set up to help rural, regional and remote people from a whole range of backgrounds to develop leadership capabilities. It's not a didactic program. It provides experiential learning exercises, activities over quite a long time. But people come away with extra confidence, extra communication skills, a very strong network, and a deeper understanding of the long-term future of their sectors, their businesses and their regions.
If they are a part of the program, what do they go through and what do they take part in?
It's a lot of commitment. It's a time commitment because the program runs over 15 months, and in that time there's at least 5 sessions of face-to-face. So we're looking at 50 days commitment over 15 months. It's cognitively, emotionally and physically demanding program. People are interviewed well before the program with the references. We're not looking for the best of the best in anything particularly. We're looking for people with principles and values and commitment to rural, regional and remote Australia, and a very long-term vision, and to be developed through the experiences that they form.
I've met you here in Elliston, and we're sitting just across the road from the bakery. I imagine you've stopped in many small towns along the way from Canberra. What day are you up to, and what have the stops been like?
Yeah, wonderful. We're up to day 18. We've had 2 rest days, so we've been riding 16 days of that 18. Yeah, bakery stops. I've lost count of veal palmies in pubs. So wherever possible, we're trying to stay in local accommodation, try out local delicacies. Great oysters, for example, in Cowell, overdosed on fish there. So we really are literally getting a taste of the smaller communities that we are passing through. We ride around about 100 kilometres a day when we're riding, which is not a huge amount. It's testing. We're in our 60s, the 3 riders, so for our age, I think we're doing okay. Some riders can do this sort of stuff in about 300k a day, but we're not pushing for a record. But we are pushing to sample a lot of regional and rural Australia as we go across.
And meeting up with a few of the alumni as well from the foundation.
I think that's been the highlight so far, of meeting people who'd been through the course when I was managing it. I think I've met about 8 to 9 so far, particularly in the Riverina and the Riverland area. So New South Wales and South Australia, those agricultural heartlands. It was just wonderful. And one couple, for example, drove over 50 kilometres to meet us on the road. And the good thing is that they bought sort of home-baked slices, cakes, 2 thermoses of coffee. And yeah, it was just wonderful because I spent a lot of time with the participants on the program when I was working with it. And to see them again, that personal connection's been a really important part of this cycling trip as well. And I do hope to meet a lot more as the trip progresses over the next 20 or so days.
That's Graham Smith cycling, as we've heard, from Canberra to Perth to raise funds for the Rural Leadership Foundation, speaking with Brooke Neindorf. You can find out more about that ride if you just do a search for Against the Wind Rural Leadership Foundation Ride. It is 9 to 1 on ABC Radio. Well, in a sign that public events are slowly getting back to normal, one of the biggest beef industry events in the nation has drawn a crowd of thousands. After 4 days of festivities at the Rockhampton Showgrounds, Beef Australia 2021 wraps up this weekend. And after an intensive celebration and reflection on all of the aspects of the industry's past, present and future, our reporter Tom Major walked through all corners of the packed-out event to bring you a taste of what's happening in the beef capital.
There's lines and lines of cattle here, all proudly exhibited by the families, the schools, the businesses that own them. Charolais, Droughtmaster, Charbray, Brangus, Murray Grey, Shorthorn, Simbra, Centerpole, everything in between. Really a curtain call of the entire Australian beef industry here. One of the most important days is, of course, the Grand Champion, where the top animal for the entire Beef Australia 2021 will be unveiled. And it's certainly a day that has a lot of crowds building here in the centre ring. Let's have a chat to some of the people who matter most here, of course, the exhibitors.
Hi, I'm Amity. I'm Olivia.
I'm Hunter.
Tell us all about what's important about today.
Well, they have all the champion and grand champions out here, and yeah, just showing them off, really, pretty much.
And they're pretty keen to be shown by the looks of it. What goes into preparing these cattle?
Washing, blowing, grooming them, doing their feet, clipping.
And tell me about the lowline breed.
So it's based in New South Wales, and it's just like miniature, and they're pretty cute.
They are lovely little cattle. Whereabouts are you from?
So we're from Cumbria, which is southeast Queensland. So we got a grand champion cow, calf, senior champion, a junior champion heifer.
How exciting is Beef 2021?
Exciting, very.
Aside from the cattle, what do you love about being here?
The atmosphere is just amazing. Meeting new people and stuff like that.
1997, the first 5 full-blood Japanese cattle were introduced to Australia. This year our judge was Mr. John Mercer. 2 head, 1 exhibitor.
Just Mac Shan from Cantor Park, Clermont.
Mac, how important is today for the cattle industry, I guess, as a whole, but also for your particular business?
Yeah, look, the interbreeds at the Beef Week every 3 years is one of the pinnacles, I guess, of the beef industry. You know, we get together, we compare everyone's cattle to one another, and it certainly is a spectacle looking at them out there all pulled up today.
How did you go with your cattle within the breed, I guess?
Yeah, look, we only participated in the fat cattle section, and we only had a very small showing. We got a little ribbon, but yeah, it's not really about that. It's just about coming down and having a look at everyone's cattle, and the seasons play a big part in that, but it's certainly great to see how much of an effort everyone goes to support the show. Yeah, all the young and upcoming crew getting into it, it's excellent. The industry's been in a big, long, dry spell, and grain prices have been incredibly dear, so to see everyone going to the effort's just amazing.
Ellen Simpson from Auctions Plus. We're based in Sydney.
Great. Ellen, look, there's a lot of trade exhibitions here, I guess, a lot of exhibitors. What's the aim of this whole thing, the setup here?
Really, our whole industry is on show here, and it's a really wonderful opportunity, particularly post-COVID, for us to connect with largely producers and everybody really across the entire length of the beef supply chain.
And just what is the party scene like after dark, after people knock off?
Exactly as you'd expect it to be. There's it can be pretty steady here in the morning, lots of croaky voices and a few sore heads. But yeah, that's a huge part of it as well. There's a lot of business done at the bar, that's for sure.
One thing I've noticed is just how big everything has become this year. Is that sort of a legacy of having a year of COVID where not much promotional activity went and took place?
Look, I certainly think so. A lot of people have gone really loud with their trade stalls. There was no regional travel and very little expenses last year as everyone battened down the hatches and headed home to work. So, this is proof. Everybody saved their pennies last year and they spent it in a big way at beef.
There's certainly been a stellar lineup of entertainment here at Beef Australia 2021. Plenty of well-known country musicians. Also fantastic to see all the hospitality workers who have been doing such a great job keeping everyone well fed and watered. Let's have a chat to some of them.
Trevor Fleming from Greenham, representing Bass Strait Beef.
You're getting a well-deserved break right now. Just how hectic has Feeding the Hordes at Beef 2021 been?
Look, it's been pretty good, Tom. We've probably done a couple of thousand portions today, and lots of people with lots of smiling faces.
Talk us through the burgers.
Well, Greenham's been doing this particular burger for about, this is the third Beef Australia. The first time was in 2015. It was really based on what Neil Perry was doing at Burger Project. So it's really based on that recipe, but it features Gippsland and Tasmanian chuck and brisket, which is minced beautifully, and just with a beautiful milk bun, lettuce, pickles and onions. So it's a real classic American cheeseburger. It's got a real punchy grass-fed flavour.
Tom Major with that report from the Rockhampton Showgrounds at Beef Australia 2021, out and about. And he's not the only person out and about. Sonia Feltoff bringing you afternoons also out and about. Sonia, where are you?
out and about, I tell you what, I'm thinking about moving down to Port Adelaide. What a great community this is, and it's been so welcoming to us over the last couple of days as we shine the spotlight on not just the people, but the places and the stories and the culture of this place, and the culture is amazing. We're broadcasting today from the Pear Cafe, which is a little neighbourhood cafe that is really kicking goals and doing amazing things. I need to make sure that you are aware that you can pop down and see us. That would be fantastic. We'd love to chat to you. We're going to find out about the future of Port Adelaide in the sense of jobs. I mean, jobs and people, what we were hearing yesterday is going to make a big difference, and big focus on defence and naval group in particular with the ships, the subs and everything like that. We'll be taking a look at that today. We'll introduce you to one of the local musicians who is very much focused on this area, and also have a look at the social fabric. This sense of community really looks after its own here, and we're going to bring you some of the stories that show that this afternoon. Nikolai, seriously, I wish you could be sitting out here under the autumnal leaves with me, because it is absolutely delightful here in Sussex Street at the Pear Cafe in Port Adelaide.
I'll try and run down if I can break the shackle that they've got me on in the studio. I'll be there soon.
Oh, well, come down and work hard with me as I sit here sipping coffees and lattes and talking to the wonderful people of Port Adelaide.
The very hardest jobs. Thanks so much, Sonia. That's Sonia Feldhoff coming up very shortly here on ABC Radio Adelaide. That's it for the country. Remember, you can find more details on our stories up online at abc.net.au/rural.
Leading news and current affairs.
There are so many ways to keep informed.
On air,
online,
on the ABC Listen app.
There is room for a broader discussion.
ABC Radio South Australia and Broken Hill.
Discover more great ABC podcasts, live radio and exclusives on the ABC Listen app.